All right, guys. So one thing about my channel that I'm actually very proud of is that I feel like I do a lot of foreshadowing. And the reason why is because I try to cover topics that I think are going to have a role in the future. Something that I'm going to have to revisit over time and that is going to develop out so people can see what is happening over time, specifically when it comes to the GOP and the Republican Party, because I do think that the GOP and the Republican Party, the quote-unquote civil war that Nikki Haley says doesn't exist, seeing how that plays out over time is really the most fascinating thing in politics right now, in my opinion. And that's why I cover it so heavily, because, you know, it's important, right? It's important. Make no mistake, there is a fight for the future of this party going on right now. And Karl Rove, who is a part of the old guard, who's a part of the establishment, who's a Republican strategist, has basically levied some heavy criticism of Trump, specifically his speech at CPAC. Now, Karl Rove went on Fox News, and I did a video about this. That's what I'm saying. My channel does a lot of heavy foreshadowing, but Karl Rove went on Fox News and basically said that Trump doesn't have any new ideas and that his speech is old and basically just recycled talking points, right? And that he's not offering a clear vision for the future of the party. Karl Rove also, in his Wall Street op-ed piece that he wrote about Trump on this same topic, basically argued that Trump did bad, right? Or he didn't do as good as he should have done in the CPAC straw polls, because that whole crowd was basically super pro-Trump. And the fact that only 55% of that crowd supports his nomination going forward is an indication that Trump is losing some favor within the party. He also says that Trump is a double-edged sword. He said that although he's brought new people to the Republican Party has lost more people than they brought in. Again, this is stuff that Karl Rove is saying, so I'm just summarizing it. He also went out the Trump's election claims. He basically went through state by state and basically explained why all the lawsuits basically have been dismissed and why they weren't hearing them. I mean, it was a very detailed but concise, basically hit piece on Trump, right? And you know, this type of stuff does matter because Karl Rove does represent the establishment. He is the brainchild of modern day establishment Republican thinking. Okay, he's the one that's working behind the scenes and telling these guys what they should do. So this is important stuff. Now, Trump, in the most Trump way possible, has hit back at Karl Rove. Okay, he's clapped back at Karl, right? Because again, Trump is trying to take over this party. He's trying to become the king and the kingmaker, right? And I would argue that Karl Rove is a pretty important piece to the establishment. Okay, he's a pretty important piece. So going after him, you know, is Trump basically going after the establishment. So Trump released his statement, and let's see exactly what he has to say about Karl Rove and others. Karl Rove has been losing for years, except for himself. He is a rhino in the highest order who came to the Oval Office lobbying for 5G for him and a group. After a lengthy discussion with Rove and Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, I said no, they're not qualified. Our nation can do much better. Karl Rove's voice on Fox is always negative for those who know how to win. He certainly hasn't helped Fox in the rating department, has he? Never had much of a feeling for Karl, in that I disagree with so many of the things he says. He is pompous, full with bad advice, and always has an agenda. He ran the campaign for 2 senators in Georgia and did a rotten job with bad ads and concepts. Should have been an easy win, but he and his friend Mitch blew it with their $600 versus $2,000 proposal. Karl would be much more at home at the disastrous Lincoln Project. I heard they have numerous openings. If the Republican Party is going to be successful, they're going to have to stop dealing with the likes of Karl Rove and just let him float away or retire like Lyndall Bob Corker, Jeff Flaky Flake, and others like Toomey of Pennsylvania, who will soon follow. Let's see what happens to Liz Cheney in Wyoming. If it weren't for me, the House would have lost 25 seats instead of gaining 15. It was a shock to everyone and almost cost Pelosi her speaker position. Likewise, 8 to 10 senators would have lost their position, including Karl's friend Mitch, our wonderful leader, who would rather spend his time fighting me than Pelosi, Schumer, and Sleepy Joe. In last year's congressional primaries, 120 out of the 122 candidates I endorsed won, and the 2 that were lost were beaten by the people claiming to be more Trump than their opponent. In the Senate, I was undefeated in primary endorsements with a record of 21-0. Ooh, that's a skunk. And close to that in the general election. 31 million people listened to my CPAC speech online, and it had among the largest television audience of the week, even though it was on cable at 4 p.m. on Sunday afternoon. Karl Rove is all talk and no action. Next time, Karl, save your election night phone call and keep doing a great job for the Democrats. Fox should get rid of Karl Rove and his ridiculous whiteboard as soon as possible. Now, a lot of liberals have started criticizing Trump for that last line, basically saying that he's calling for Fox News to cancel Karl Rove in the midst of the Republicans being against cancel culture. But as you guys can see, Trump is going after Karl Rove. He's basically calling out Karl Rove as a bad Republican strategist who doesn't have any good ideas and is basically not falling in line with Trump. He's not getting on board with the new movement in the party, right? That's what Trump is calling him out about. Now, Karl Rove has responded back to Trump, and he basically said this, quote, "I've been called a lot of things in my career, but never a rhino. I voted for every Republican presidential candidate since I turned 18 and have labor only for the GOP, a Republican candidate since then," said the 70-year-old Rove. "I have a different recollection of Mr. Trump's views on 5G in our conversation election night. I'll continue to use my whiteboard and voice to call balls and strikes." All right, so that is Karl Rove basically saying that he's not going anywhere and that basically Trump is wrong. Right? Trump is wrong. That's what he's saying. So, in this chapter of the GOP Civil War, as you can see, Trump has come out and basically went after Karl Rove, but at the same time, continue to go after those that are against him, right? Like, he took shots at Mitch McConnell again, even though he didn't really go after Mitch that much in his CPAC speech, in which I thought for sure that he would go after Mitch. I thought he was going to come out and obliterate Mitch, but he chose not to do it. And he also went after Liz Cheney again and all the others who, again, don't support him or align with his views or they're actively working against him. It'll be interesting to see once Trump gets caught up on Adam Kinzinger to see what he does and who he goes after them. But the biggest takeaway that I want you guys to understand is that this is a part of the process that Trump is using in order to become the kingmaker, right? Essentially, he has to prove that he can run his own candidates, that he can have his own political infrastructure, that he can do all the things that he needs to do to actually get people elected and to win general elections, right? Specifically in purple districts. That is what the establishment is hanging their hat on, right? Their biggest argument against Trump is that Trump can't win general elections, right? Now, Trump obviously is responding to this. He's trying to dismiss that claim, right? He's trying to take credit for a lot of the re-elections and Republicans that won seats in the House and the Senate because of him. So he's trying to go after this idea that his endorsements are bad or that being associated with him is bad. Now, again, that's a little bit different than him not being an elected seat and him actually having infrastructure in running his own candidates from the get-go, having a grassroots Trump coalition on the ground. That is different than just throwing out an endorsement. He's going to have to prove that he can establish his own coalition of Trump Republicans that can win not only primaries, but general elections. The establishment does not think that he can do that. That is the biggest dividing point at this point. Because if Trump can win primaries or Trump-backed candidates can win primaries, but they can't win general elections, ultimately what that means is that there is going to be a loss of seats in the House and the Senate. That's only good for Democrats. And that's why Mitch McConnell and those like Karl Rove are coming out so heavily against Trump because they don't believe that Trump candidates can win general elections, which equals more Democrat power, right? So that's why they're so opposed to him at this point. They're not really opposed to Trump or Trump-like candidates in super red districts. They don't really care about that. They don't care about that. What they care about is those in purple districts. They care about those who potentially can lose general elections. That's what they care about. So we'll see how this unfolds, but 2022 is really shaping up to be a crazy political season. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.